Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. Everybody's doing well on another beautiful Tuesday here in New Brunswick, close to 35 degrees here in Rexton. Great day in the world of sports as well. A lot of news surrounding the NFL, and we got even some NHL news today. So August, it's a great month. Usually it's really slow. Baseball's at the front burner, but a lot happening. And Shay, obviously you're still in the hockey mood. You got the Morgan Riley t-shirt on here on August 17th. So you're already prepping for next season, I see.
Yeah, well, you called me out on the last podcast and said I wasn't wearing any Leafs gear, so I thought I'd throw something on just on the right occasion. I know there wasn't no big Leaf signings today, but got to sort my sport any way I can.
Right.
And yeah, it is a Morgan Riley shirt, and we just discussed before we got on whether or not he's going to re-sign after this year ends. And if he's not looking like it, does he get the old axe? But we'll see. I'm interested to see because I've loved Morgan Riley, but he's also kind of grown the opposite way on me these last couple of years.
Yeah, after his real Norris type season, it's kind of gone south for him. I kind of reverted back to the norm, I would say, but he's still a good defenseman. I'm sure he'll get money wherever he goes after seeing what some of these guys are getting paid this offseason. Before we get to Breaking Bad, I wanted to ask you, what'd you make of Tim Tebow getting cut today? I know you're a big supporter.
I'm very devastated. I got on both hands and knees, and I prayed because it's just like Tebow probably did when he got cut.
Definitely.
Does that mean he's rooted to the practice squad, Juggy?
That means he's off the roster completely.
Oh, he's just completely off the roster. Okay. Yeah. Well, he'll get picked up somewhere, maybe back in baseball or a religious camp. I can see Tim Tebow being like the guy who does like in the States you have those like millionaire kind of preachers that go around and they make a crap ton of money. I could see Tim Tebow having a little career change and maybe moving on to something of that nature because he seems like he could be really good at it.
Yeah, you could definitely be on those infomercials back in the day where, you get like Father Brian and he needs money for Bibles. They could see Tebow being the new snake oil salesman, if you will. But yeah, I got to say Tuesday really is the only day of the week, man, that doesn't have a feel. Monday has a feel because you're done with the weekend. Wednesday, hump day, kind of a feel. Thursday, you're getting close to the weekend. Thirsty Thursday, if you like to partake in beverages. Friday, week's done. Then Saturday and Sunday, I think both have a feel. Tuesdays is kind of, just comes and goes. I get excited now because we get to do this. But when I saw Tebow was cut, I really don't, as you know, we've had discussions with, I don't get excited often in life. And it's probably part of my makeup and why I'm a weird dude. But I was really excited when he was cut this morning. I had a lot of pride from it, and I was genuinely very happy that Tim Tebow was no longer on an NFL roster.
Are you saying Tuesday's your new day because this is the official day that weekly that Tim Tebow got his ass canned?
It might have to be because the fact that I don't have to hear his name anymore or see him try to play tight end, which he didn't do well. I don't got to see him pray anymore. It's just maybe he'll take up cricket. Maybe that's his calling, or croquet, because baseball and football clearly haven't been.
Yeah, state champion. That's all you got to say, though. State champion, baby.
Yeah, the old Gators. He was the man for a hot minute, and then it went south. So today we're here to talk about season 3, episodes 9 and 10 of Breaking Bad. Episode 9 being Kafkaesque, which is an interesting title. And then episode 10 titled Fly. I think, Shay, rewatching this for the 4th or 5th time, it's crazy that they did this episode, first of all, that it worked. I think it's a really, really good episode. Not much happens, but I do think it's one of the more creative episodes in television, and how they took a lot of risks doing this episode. I thought it worked.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what critiques thought of this, whether it was hated or loved, but you're right. It is cool that they could throw something like this in here. Like amidst a really, really good season and still have it be, a focal point. Yeah, it's a slow episode, not much happens with the bigger plot of what's going on, but you find some things out about the characters, and you really see Walter, I think, kind of come out of his shell a little bit towards Jesse, without giving too much away, because I think the premise of the episode itself is funny, and we'll get into that after we finish number 10. But yeah, no, I think you're right. It is a huge risk for them to do an episode like this, and I think for the most part it paid off. I didn't like it the first time I watched it. I really enjoyed it the second time I watched it. So that just kind of shows you the spectrum of what some people may think.
Totally agree. When I watched it for the first time, I thought, when is this episode going to end? I was like, this sucks. But I think it's the complete reversal of a bottle episode where you see, I don't know. I've watched Community a few times. They love bottle episodes where basically it's the main characters. They stay in one place the whole episode. And that's basically what this was a bottle episode, but I found it so good because these characters are so compelling. You got Walt and Jesse, and just seeing them interact without Saul or Skylar getting involved really paid off for me. When it comes to Kafka, we start off the episode 9 with basically an infomercial. And it's an ad for Los Polos Hermanos. Gustavo Fring's obviously his chicken chain that we've come to know. And it's mentioned, Shay, in it that it's the Chicken Brothers. And we didn't know he had a partner. And, that was kind of a breaking news to the show that it's the Chicken Brothers. We only see Gustavo at this point in the show.
Yeah, it kind of leaves you with a little wondering of what happened, whether, maybe there was some kind of disagreement or of such. So yeah, it does leave you with some questions on what really happened. But yeah, I love that old commercial. I mean, I think it's kind of funny. Like, I don't know, it's just a super old commercial with two brothers, and they got their chicken, that greasy old chicken, this tender taste. Makes me hungry though. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I agree. So, and it pivots about halfway through the commercial to Jesse and Walter weighing their meth. They got these big plastic bins full of it, weighing 200 plus pounds of meth. And then we also see Gustavo's facility where he has all these women basically in COVID-19 gear, like they're nurses. And, they're loading it into chicken trucks. They're putting it in the different chicken bins. It says where it's going to, New Mexico or Nevada, and they're loading it in the Los Polos Hermanos trucks. And that's how they're distributing this meth when it's getting sent to, the 14 different chicken chains, which I thought was pretty brilliant.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is kind of like what I do for a living, and is in watching processes. So watching the processes on how this is made, how they go from, taking out of the packaging, putting in 2 pounds, putting those pounds into the chicken batter, like you said, and then even marking it with like a discrete marker that you couldn't see with the naked eye, but being glowed over with like an LED light or blue light, whatever you call that. Just really, really neat on how that whole system works. And you kind of see, the bigger picture on, Gus's plan on how he's distributing to everywhere, I guess. And, no one's going to think a Los Polos chicken truck is carrying methamphetamine or any drug for that matter. So it's really brilliant when you think about it on how he's able to just kind of slip by, DEA's nose basically by doing this.
Yeah. And really good insight to see how he does it and how he gets it around. And the scene kind of ends with him standing outside watching all the trucks go by. So just the quiet boss at the head of all of this. So we pivot back to the lab where Jesse and Walt are there, and they're weighing more meth, and they have 201.6 pounds. And, Jesse says, let's save it for our next cook. Like, why are we giving him a pound and, a 6 more of meth? We can save it for next time. Let's work smart, not more. And, Walt basically says, like, we're getting paid very well. Like, who cares if it's another pound and a 6? but Jesse has a complete opposite opinion.
Yeah, Jesse, for once, not being the math guy per se in this relationship, kind of does the math a little bit on what, they're selling at top dollar, obviously, because it's the best product in the world. And, he comes up with it and he says at the end of all of this 3 months where they're getting paid $3 million, Gus in total is getting paid $96 million. So yeah, you could say that he feels like he's getting shafted because he feels like they're doing in most of the work, making the product, and he feels like he should be getting more, obviously. So these little, 1 pound here, 2 pound there, I guess it could make you a little pissed off when you think about the grand scheme of things. And, Jesse feels like he's getting shafted a little bit.
Yeah. And this is it's interesting because they are highly paid employees, but it's kind of like, to bring it back to sports, it's like an athlete. You're getting paid very well, but you're the owner of that franchise. Steve Ballmer for the Clippers is worth $100 billion and he's getting, a lot of money. And it's just interesting to see Jesse, a quote unquote junkie or a self-described junkie, really point out, socioeconomic status, saying, I'm doing way more work than this guy, and I'm not, I'm not getting any of the benefits. And I think a lot of employees at different businesses would probably relate to Jesse's line of thinking here.
Yeah, you look at Joel Embiid getting this, $50 million contract today, and you think, wow, that's so much money. But, he's the one putting in the work, putting his body on the sacrifice, kind of like you could say Jesse putting his legal life on sacrifice, but it's really the owners who end up getting all that profit in the end. But, Walter doesn't really seem to care. He almost seems distracted in this whole conversation because, as soon as he's done, it's time to go and he's got to leave. And, great saying here. Jesse goes, what's more important about money? And automatically the camera pans to Hank, who's kind of laying in a hospital unconscious.
Right. And so after the last episode, we knew Hank was okay, but we hadn't seen him speak yet or anything. He was still very much, tubes were running him, but he's awake now. But obviously he can't, severe spinal injury. He can't walk. The likelihood of him walking again is very slim. And he's just in bed, and Gomez comes to visit him. And Gomi has some news for him that he thinks will cheer Hank up. And he lets Hank know that the blue meth is all over New Mexico, Nevada, spreading to Texas, and basically tells Hank, like, Hank, you were right. Like, all this work, all your hunkering down and your suspicions are correct. Like, it's back on the streets in a big way. Yeah.
And, probably to surprise to us watching and even me watching again, Hank really says, like, no, like, he doesn't really even take credit for it. He's just like, no, I haven't done anything yet. Why do you think he was so hesitant to, take credit for something in some, when everyone else basically doubted him? He was the one who had it right the whole time.
Right. He mentions in his next little soliloquy that he had him. He had him like in the palm of his hand. Like it was within. I think he was talking about Jesse in this instance. I think maybe if he thinks if he can get Jesse, then he can flip the real, the head honcho. He can get to the meat of this, find out who's really running things. And I think he knows, like, okay, I'm now in a hospital bed. I'm a cripple, for lack of a better term right now. I can't do anything. And he's still out there. So technically I've lost this battle, even though I'm in my head. And like you're saying, he's right, but he still can't take the credit because he hasn't found that ultimately boss or the head of the snake, so to speak.
Yeah, it's like he almost hasn't really completed his mission yet, and that's why it feels like he's failed. He's failed himself, more importantly, but also failed, I guess the good people of Nevada.
Right. Yeah.
New Mexico, sorry, not Nevada. Yeah. I got my states mixed up.
Yeah. There's a bunch of them, so they're all kind of the same. But Hank goes on to tell this interesting story about how he really shouldn't be alive, that he got a call a minute before the twins attacked him. This is news to Marie, news to Gomez. He tells him that he'd be dead if, you know, it was a scramble call, but somebody knew that he was going to get hit. And he suspects the cartel is involved because, you know, the cartel in Mexico kind of blew up. That's news as well. And Walter's just kind of sitting there in his seat, like looking very befuddled. And then Skylar kind of looks back at him and gives him a look as well.
Yeah, kind of a look of like, are you, does this have to do with you? Are you involved in some way? Because even though Skylar doesn't know the exact contacts of who Walter deals with, obviously he deals with some shady people, and, not much more shadier comes than the cartel.
Yeah. So he actually leaves he goes to his car and he's sitting there, and Skylar enters and just says, "Are we safe?" And he replies, "Yes." But she says something interesting too, following with, "Are you safe?" So clearly there's still a bit of emotional attachment with these two. Obviously they're now divorced, but we see they're still connected. Skylar still does care for Walter.
Yeah, she's not kind of throwing them away saying, is what you did going to kill our family, but also is it going to kill you, implying that she does have some interest. And even though she leaves right after that, obviously it's a sign that she does care about him in some way, because, at the end of the day, he is still the father of her children.
Exactly. So we pivot to Jesse. We see a couple interesting scenes in a row here with Jesse. He goes to a rehab meeting, and it's with the same therapist that he had in rehab, who talked about it, him killing his daughter while going out trying to buy booze. He's a cocaine addict. So same guy, he kind of says, "Jesse, how are things?" And Jesse, of course, still lying, says, "Oh yeah, I got a job at a laundromat, and yeah, it sucks. And my boss is a dick, and his boss is a dick, and I work these crazy long hours, and none of them listen to me, and nobody knows who the real boss is." And he's basically telling his life story, but he's doing it through, a half truth.
Yeah, no, it is funny because he probably does have some frustrations he wants to get off his chest, and he doesn't really have anyone else to talk to besides maybe the few buds that he does have. So, what better place than to get it off your chest here? And yeah, it is funny, but Jesse, you just kind of feel for him sometimes because he's just been through so much already. And, unfortunately, for watching the show previously, me and know that he's going to go through a lot more.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's just – and we'll get more, I guess, into the relationship him and Walter share as well in the next episode. But, yeah, just feel for him sometimes.
Yeah, it's tough. And we pivot to Saul. He's at this nail salon. And in comes Jesse, and he goes, "Hey, you own this now." And Jesse goes, "For free?" And he goes, "Hell no, for free. Like, you got to buy it for $396,000. But Saul's pitching that this is the perfect place to launder money.
Yeah, and Jesse's not really buying it. He's like, I'm a criminal. I'm not worried about taxes. And Saul goes into this big speech about what are the CRA going to see when they see this this guy going out having a good time, and
nice house.
Jesse goes, "Oh, a drug dealer," and Saul goes, "No, someone who cheats taxes." And it's true. I mean, let's be honest. Like, they got a good eye on everyone's spending, and if you haven't figured it out, all government does. So what better way to hide it than a cash business as such his own? Saul is just, yeah, you gotta love Saul because he just puts everything. You want to hate him, but at the same time you want to love him. He's just one of those characters. Yeah. He just comes off so arrogant, so cocky, and Jesse's just not buying it.
Yeah, and he even says, "So what, like 5%?" And he goes, no, 17%. He goes, "It's 5% for Walt." And he goes, "Yeah, well, seniority, he gets a lower level." And Jesse's just fed up with him. Like, the past couple interactions these two have had are not good. and he's so pissed off at
Well,
Saul.
you can even think about it when Hank beat up, when Hank beat him up, Jesse implying, Saul told Walter in private, maybe we should get rid of him. So
Right.
that just kind of shows what, the stem of worth of what Saul sees Walter as and what he sees Jesse as. Clearly, he doesn't have that fond of a relationship with Jesse because he was willing to get rid of him, no problems asked, if he thought he was a liability.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. So Jesse's just in a lot of trouble. So he goes to another meeting, and this is really interesting, and it tells you a lot about Jesse. It's kind of a sad story, but also one of perseverance. He goes to another meeting, and the counselor asks, okay, we know you hate the laundromat, Jesse, but if you could do anything in the world, if money didn't matter, what would it be? And he tells this really endearing story about carpentry, about how in high school he kept building this box, building and building until he got better at it. And it kind of showed that Jesse did have work ethic. He does have a drive, and he needed somebody to kind of push him in that right direction and kind of believe in him. And this teacher really did it for him in a subliminal way.
Yeah, exactly. By not, calling him down to the lowest for doing a poor job, he just, he basically just asked him, like, is this the best you could do? Which I think is a better motivator sometimes when you think about it, Juggy. Instead of ripping somebody apart, everyone in the world has got a bad grade or, gotten ripped apart by their teacher at some point, unless you're, a busy beaver. But, some teachers, instead of just like doing that, they do the opposite. And they say, if this is the best you think you can do, instead of,
right,
is this the best you can do? Then it kind of leaves you with the mind of saying, well, maybe I can do better. And that's kind of what you see here. And it also, we can't get into much about Jesse in the future and what he does with Mike, but there's a similar path, and having someone believe in him and looking out for him, different than what Walter has for him.
Exactly. And just thinking about this teacher, Shay, it's a complete opposite to Walter, because we've seen how Walter grade tests. He just says, like, not good enough. Are you kidding me? Apply yourself. And I agree. Like, you're not good at some subjects, but sometimes the teacher has to ask you, did you actually study? And if you can look at them and lie, well, then you're not going to do that well in life. But if you can admit that you didn't, maybe the next time you'll get a 75 and you won't get a 56. And I think that's really the moral of the story here, where people expect Jesse to get a 50. But if you let him work, if you let him at least show that he does have intelligence, he can get an 80. And I think that sometimes that's all you need in life, is just that opportunity or that person to believe in you.
Yeah, 100%.
So I enjoyed that scene. We go back to the hospital. The doctor comes in to see Hank, and it's basically a big test to see if he has any feeling in his lower extremities, his legs and his foot, basically. And doctor starts feeling him, and he says, do you feel anything here? Starts kind of pricking him with a little pick. Says, no. Starts moving up his leg, and about halfway up he does. And he says, out of 10, yeah, it's about a 6. Then he gets to another spot, maybe 3, and then 5. But he does have some feeling, and this signals to Marie that they're going to need some physiotherapy coming up to try to get Hank to walk again.
Yeah, she gets real excited, this is great news, you're going to be able to walk again. But the doctor is not so optimistic about this. Takes, both Skylar and Marie into another room with, I'm assuming just an insurance lady or maybe someone who works at the hospital. And they kind of go crunch numbers, and they're saying, well, I could get you the best, but the best not be beyond your plan. And this kind of reverts all the way back to Walter and, him not having a great plan with his teaching, states in general, not having great, healthcare system. Yeah. We could go on for days about that, but it's a whole nother story. And, Marie's saying, no, like, I'm going to get my husband the best physical therapist in the world because I want him to walk again. And that's, he's basically saying he's an American hero. And, what is he supposed to just coop up and die and not use his legs? So she's pretty passionate about this. And, this kind of gets Skylar's mind rolling on how, she can help Marie, like how they help them.
Right. And it's pretty crazy that you get attacked by two illegal immigrants. Let's just be honest. These two are not U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
They try to kill you and you have to pay for your recovery. You can't walk and you have to pay. Like, that is such a flawed system. I couldn't imagine doing nothing wrong and still getting the shaft. You know, he was doing his job killing Tuco. It's not his fault that these two twins are mad, and he has to pay. You know, Marie's gonna have to pay the ultimate price when it comes to paying for this medical bill. And Hank will never, even if he does walk, will never be the same.
Yeah, exactly. He'll have to work till he's, 90 just to get out of debt. And you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of the government's fault for letting, two illegal immigrants come in and then proceed to attack him because, he was without a gun, as we said in the last podcast. So really, he was defenseless, and, he made do with the best he had.
Right. So Walt sets up a meeting with Gustavo, and he goes and basically says, I want to put everything on the table. Someone called Hank before he was attacked, and I believe it was you. Actually, I pretty much know it was you, and you're doing it to protect me. And he puts it together. He says, I believe those two were supposed to kill me, and someone threw them off the scent or got them to attack Hank. And he basically says, I owe you my life. You got the Mexicans and you got the American border to attack the cartel. I applaud your strategy, but he's basically trying to get Gus to admit that he was the one that saved him.
Yeah, and Gus is just sitting at the other cross of this table with this, it's a blank stare, but it's like a firm, it's kind of like a firm look, and almost like it's an analyzing look. You know what I mean? Like you're just taking something in, and that's, he does it so well. And yeah, he basically, Walter puts it all on the table, and he puts it together perfectly, kind of saying exactly Gus's moves. And this is the battle of the brains we talked about earlier, with Gus trying to get Walter to cook again and basically attack his pride without, saying that he's going to attack his pride. And this Walter kind of comes back with this and basically says, I knew your plan from the beginning. This is what's going to happen. And then Walter says, at the end of this 3 months, what's going to happen? Am I really safe? Is my family really safe? Or are we just going to be slaughtered just like everybody else?
Yeah, and it's a fair question because although Hank didn't die, I'm sure Gustavo wouldn't have complained if the twins both died and Hank died in this crash as well. So, but Gus he gives him an interesting answer. He says, well, what do you want to happen? And he kind of said, well, I want my family to be safe. Okay, they're safe. You're fine. But if you want to keep cooking for me, we'll keep it open-ended. We can do 3 months for $1.5 million, or we can, times that by a year, and that can be the flat money. So it's interesting. He kind of calms Walter down, and he says they're safe, but there's no way in hell I would trust this guy. No,
not at all. I mean, when you think about the other people he's cut off and hasn't even blinked an eye. You think about the cartel boss Salguero or everybody else. You can't really trust them. But by having Walter, I guess, cook for him, it gives them incentive to keep him alive. And I'm sure that's what Walter is probably thinking in the same sense. He's thinking, well, the $15 million I'm going to make, yeah, that's great. But if I keep cooking for him, well, he has a reason to keep me around.
Right.
So I think he's also thinking about that. And we pivot to a really, really interesting scene after, when Walter, kind of breaks this deal. He's on his way home, and he does something a little far unusual.
Yeah, he's driving and he starts speeding, going very, very fast, and he just closes his eyes and he starts skidding into the opposite lane. And there's this basically a big tractor coming at him, and he's hammering the horn, and Walt opens his eyes at the very last second cuts the wheel, swerves all over the road and goes onto the dust. But he was seconds away from death. Very, very well could have going at that speed. And it was very, very weird scene from Walter here.
Yeah. What do you think the motivation behind this was? I mean, obviously something in his conversation with Gus triggered this, but what could that be? What did he say to kind of get him to do this?
Yeah, I thought about that too. For Walt, because if he dies, his family's not safe because he's not cooking for him. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But maybe it's feeling trapped, that he's under somebody's control. We know how he hates that. So maybe it's that. I found this a strange reaction because I totally agree. I don't know why, you'd have this reaction after, something, the meeting went as well as it could have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And, after watching both these episodes back to back, and that's why I love doing this, because we can contrast and compare. Mm-hmm. Walter talks about the perfect moment, and without going too in depth without having episodes here, the perfect moment being, when is he going to die? Because, he for a while had an expiry date on his life, of course, because of his cancer. And, he's in remission now and he's doing well, but he feels that he kind of comes out and says it. Sometimes he feel like he should have been gone by now, and that all he really needed to get to his goal financially to help his family move on. And now it seems like so much more, but without getting to it, that's kind of what I revert back to when I thought about this scene. I thought, well, maybe this conversation with Gus, and maybe with some kind of reassurance in his brain that his family was going to be okay. But like we talked about with Gus, there's really no reassurance. Easily, Gus could just have his family killed, especially, maybe not knowing if Skylar or his other family members know.
Right. I think for him, the perfect moment, just thinking, would probably have been maybe right before Jane died, because he had all that money Skylar did not know yet. There wouldn't have been the crash. I guess maybe before his next surgery, even before all his treatment, he was making quite a bit of money. So if you think about the money he made just to pay for his different surgeries, that probably would have been the best time. And pivoting to that thought, he mentions how his family would have remembered him in his best, and they would have looked at him fondly, where now his son really doesn't enjoy him that much, is very cold shoulder with him. His wife hates his guts more often, a lot. And his daughter would have known him she would have been told about her great dad, the great teacher and the good man. And that could be a ship. That ship could be sailed now. Now that it's where he's at in life.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can analyze this scene. Him running off the road and almost killing himself. But yeah, I think that's that's what I think of. And obviously there's 1,000 other things you could analyze about it.
So Marie is fretting over money, and for Hank, and she's talking to Skylar about it, and Walt is in the conversation with them, and she's kind of like, what are we gonna do? I can't afford this, but I need to make it work. Like, I'll take, get rid of the house, we'll sell the house, whatever. Skylar just chimes in, well, Walt would pay for it. And Marie's kind of like, well, Walt, like, what's Walt? Teacher's on sabbatical. Like, what the hell is he making for money right now? And she, to her credit, very quick, very smart, says, Walt's made a lot of money recently. Gretchen didn't pay for those treatments. Walt did, because he's basically a professional gambler.
Yeah, kind of has this written up into a T, Juggy? Like, This isn't something she came up with, that day. This is something she thought about, something, how are we going to tell our family that, if say, God forbid, the Gretchen and Elliot ever said that we didn't pay for it,
right?
How do we cover our asses? So, this is the perfect time. Marie needs the money. She needs some security over how she's going to get Hank back to health, right? And Skylar has the perfect plan. And basically, with a short story here, like, all the times that Walter went missing, when he had his mental breakdown, that was all because of wins and losses. And, eventually he had to stop going to legal casinos because, IRS can trace his winnings. So he started going to underground illegal casinos and really, put it on a platter. And then Walter is silent the whole time. I think he's more or less impressed with, how good of a story it is. And Marie's just eating it up. Yeah. And, she's like, Walter, how could you do this? And Walter's just like, yeah, I don't know. I just did it. Like, I just got it. And, she says, so how much did you make? And Walter says, 7 figures. And, it's a lot of money to admit to, even though she is family, we know Marie's kind of been a loose cannon in the past.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, she talks more than anybody. And it's a lot of money to admit making gambling. I mean, people make money, but that's a lot, even for a smart guy like Walter. But yeah, like you said, great plan. He's counting cards, and he's just he's Adam. Yeah, exactly. He's off the set of 21. So they said the night, the Chuco incident where he was in his fog state, that night he lost 14 grand. It was his pension and he couldn't handle it. So he had suicidal. It's a very, like you said, very put together story. And, Walter says, yeah, 7 figures. I did very well. Yeah, very, very good at it. And it kind of concludes with Walt asks Skylar, like, where did you come up with that? Like, that was really good. And she responds with, I learned from the best.
Yeah. It's a cold move by Anna Gunn, and she pulls off the line really well, but yeah, just the look on Walter's face, like, oh, like, yeah, okay, the joke's still on me, I see. But at the same time, at least they have an alibi, at least to their closer family members, if anything were ever to get out.
Exactly. Also in this episode, I forgot to mention, this is interesting because it will lead into the future couple episodes. Jesse meets with Badger and Skinny P, and he tells them, like, let's start slinging again, man. Like, let's start selling. Skinny's like, yeah, like, let's do it. And Badger's like, yeah, dude, let's hit the streets. And because they're making over 200 pounds a week and they're always over, Jesse might be pinching a little bit and taking from that stack. And he's kind of thinking that Badger and Skinny can sell the extra that he gets from his day job.
Yeah. We see a scene where, Jesse's beat bobbing away, kind of counting the stacks. And, he tells Walter amount, but, he's over by, a quarter or half a pound. And, clearly he's skimming and taking some off. And, this leads into the next episode, but yeah, clearly not a good move, probably working with these people, but just to make a little side hustle. And it kind of reverts back to when Jesse said that he felt like they weren't getting paid enough. Well, right. If he does this, he gets a little bit more income coming off of what he worked on.
Exactly. And Jesse has been the greasiest guy in the show. Walt has been by far the greasier person when it comes to just his decisions. But Jesse plants Badger and Skinny at his rehab meeting.
Yeah.
And they start talking about the blue meth and how it's back in town around all these recovering addicts. And it's so clear that they're there to sell. And it might not be clear to the counselor, but to us as viewers, I think, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that they're there to try to lure these addicts into getting back into their, into their addiction.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking of all the greasiest moves in this show, and of course, you think of faking Marie's injury. That's got to be up there. But this one plays right up there. Selling to addicts is got to be one of the most cold-hearted things I've ever heard of.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine doing that. That's a new low, and Jesse's clearly ready to stoop to it because he wants to be Bezos. He wants to be Gustavo. He wants to be the kingpin making the big money. Yep. And he's willing to do whatever it takes right now to get there. So that really ends episode 9. It brings us to episode 10, entitled Fly. And it so interesting, like we said off the top, but it starts with the Mockingbird lullaby being played. And it's Skylar singing, and you don't see her, but what you do see is the makeup of a fly. You see its eyes, you hear the buzzing, you see its wings, the disgusting fly. But throughout the entire intro of the episodes, which are normally, they're all different. I think they're all really interesting. This one is just a fly, and it's very, you don't really know what to think heading into the episode.
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks, and this episode, great, like we started off with, but you're right. It's so simple and such a simple idea that you're thinking, how could this work? I'm sure when they were even writing this, I think they're thinking, will this work and could we do it? But I think they're great acting and, highly done performances by Aaron Paul and Bryan Cranston. They were able to pull this off big time.
Yes, exactly. So Walt and Jesse arrive at the lab. They are, we see them cleaning, washing down all the equipment. Jesse throws in a funny line where he goes, "We need some water, boys. Gatorade me, bitch." And he's still complaining about doing grunt work, for the money that he's getting paid. But really, the big point of this open is Walter is starting to notice that they are off on their output, that there is meth missing, and he doesn't know why.
Yeah. He's kind of putting the numbers together, crunching them at least. And, he's like, I'm taking this into consideration, And of course, this catches the ear of Jesse, who probably is getting a little worried because, maybe no one else will find out. But if Walter finds out, well, at least he's going to have to feel the wrath of Mr. White. So, he's like, oh, you could be, condensation or, could be leak, spillage. And, Walter's just like, no, you idiot. Like, it's not that. And then he says, could it be, what was it, Bastille? No.
Some word used, that, like it could be that. And he just, no. And Walt is basically saying, without saying, somebody's taking meth and it's not me. So it has to be you. To me, anyway.
In a way, it doesn't, even doesn't come off that way, but he is basically blaming something. And, you could say that everything's down to a science because it literally is with this lab. But, fair enough, Jesse's like, okay, I'm heading home, and then he even says, Mr. White, are you okay? And, this is kind of a check-in because, he arrived at the laundromat and Walter's just kind of staring out into space. And he's, he's kind of looking and Walter's just like, no, I'm fine. Just go. And he leaves. And, what happens after he leaves, Jesse or Joey?
That could be Jesse.
You could be Jesse.
Depending on the day, if I get a new haircut. A fly buzzes in the lab and it lands about a foot in front of him. So he takes his clipboard and tries to hammer the fly. Thinks he's got it, looks under it. It's not dead. Fly continues to buzz around and he's trying to kill it. And it makes some sense, but I think as a viewer, you're kind of like, okay, it's just a fly. Like, why are you so, I hate them too, but why are you trying to kill this one so bad? Yeah. But it's to the point where the fly buzzes to the ceiling and Walt decides, oh yeah, I'll kill it with my shoe.
Yeah. So he proceeds to take his shoe off, throw it up there. And, what does he do? He hits a light and a light busts and glass comes flying down and, his shoe gets caught in the light. So he's like, okay, well now instead of this fly, I got to get my shoe. So he grabs a broom, kind of walks up. if you've never watched the show, think of it like kind of as a second story,
Mm-hmm.
and you're hanging over a railing. So it's basically what he's doing, and he's trying to get his shoe. He's trying to knock it down. He starts on the one half the railing, leaning over it, and then he gets on the other side.
Right. So he gets to the other side. He does get the shoe down, but as he hits the shoe, the fly lands on the light. So he's looking at the fly. He reaches over to try to hit it, and he falls off the level, off the stair lift, basically. And like you said, this is a pretty big fall. He hits one of the big, his belly lands and hits one of their equipment, this big industrial, looking thing. It's a big, very heavy thing. Yeah. Hammers that, then hits the floor. And it's not going well for Walter at this point.
No, the fly's got him at least, 0-3 right now. The first thing I guess the two times I've watched this now, Juggy, I thought he's going to get a piece of glass stuck in him. Because when he falls right next to the glass that shattered from the light. And I'm thinking, oh God, like this is something bigger. They obviously don't go that way, and he's fine. And, it kind of pivots to the morning. Jesse gets there. His car's still there. He does his thing, gets inside, and he tries to open the door to get into the lab, and he can hardly even get it open.
Yeah, he basically has put all the air, or like the ventilation system is fully on at the top of the stair level so that nothing can come in from the inside. And Jesse's just kind of like, what the hell is going on here? And he tells him there's been a contamination. And Jesse goes, oh shit, like what? Like Ebola?
Yeah. And no, sure enough, he's I don't even think Walter wants to admit it. He's like, no, it's a fly. And Jesse's got this puzzled look, and he's like, what? Like, a singular fly? And, Walter's like, yeah, no, it's a fly, and it's a hazard, and, we can't cook unless we get rid of this thing, because, it's clear that it could ruin anything if it touches.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesse's still puzzled. He just can't get over the fact that they're stopping cooking to kill a fly.
Right. And the bigger thing for Jesse is he hasn't seen it at this point. So he goes, where is the fly? And Walter's like, no, it's in here somewhere. I'm telling you. But he can't see it. So he's seen Mr. White the day before. Like you mentioned, he thinks he's kind of out to lunch already. So he's kind of like, okay, there's a fly in here, but we can't cook. So we're wasting a day of work. We're going to lose a batch. And you're nuts. Like, let's just go cook. And so they start walking around the lab looking for the fly, both really funny. But while they're doing it, Jesse tries to put the oats, or, the mix, so to speak, into one of the containers, and Walter quickly stops him.
Yeah, he almost looks like a horror movie as he pops out of nowhere, and he basically goes, and Jesse's not scared of him. He goes to try and open the thing. And what does Walter do? He whacks him with his homemade, I guess, fly catcher, which is basically just a broomstick wrapped in tape. Right. And, Jesse's basically complaining, but, what finally happens? The fly is right on Walter's head.
Yeah, as they're kind of scuffing, just like, what the hell? And Walt goes, Jesse, look. And he sees the fly on top of his forehead. He goes, okay, Mr. White, don't move. Let's give me your swatter. So he kind of hands it to him slowly. And Jesse does not care about killing the fly in this moment. He full on baseball swings at Walter's head. And he can
no accuracy.
No accuracy at all, did not care. And, he says he kills the fly, but it was so clear that he did not.
Yeah. Blame. He says, "Oh, look, it's over there, under the desk." And he goes and picks it up, and sure enough, it's a raisin. So, yeah, they still got this fly. And as of right now, who knows? But this fly has at least got Walter down 0-4, 0-5, maybe, since its encounter.
Right. So Jesse says, "Let's go get some air. Like, you're nuts. Like, let's just go get some fresh air." And at this point, Walt says, "Oh, do you have your keys? Like, I just don't want to get locked out." So he grabs the keys, locks Jesse out from the inside, and he says, "If you're not going to help me, then leave." Mm-hmm. And Jesse's like, what we're losing money today. He's pissed off. He's at the top. He's talking to all these Spanish people at the laundromat looking for help. And what does he do? He turns off the power in the lab, making it completely pitch black. And Walter is basically just scrambling, and he can't see anything at this point.
Yeah. Walter almost has it before, and, obviously loses it because of the darkness. And, finally he kind of has to let Jesse back in, because that's the only way that he's going to get light in order to kill this effing fly. And Jesse brings some items.
Yeah, he goes and buys some fly swatter. He gets some other stuff, but the biggest thing Walter likes is he gets, like a fly, things for flies. They're not hazardous. So they'd be good for the lab. And they're basically like glue. If a fly lands on it, he's stuck. He can't move. He will die eventually. So they hang them all on top of the lights on top of the lab. And they're basically like, okay, we'll get him. Like it's warm up there. He likes it. Like we're set. And at this point, Jesse makes some coffee and he drugs Walters.
Yeah. Not with real drugs, but with, 9 or 8 sleeping pills. So, at this point, Jesse's probably a little concerned because A, he knows Walter was not doing the day before. B, he's been up for, who knows, at this point could be 30 to 36 hours. And, he just kind of says, he goes on a story, and I'll let you take that away about his aunt. Yeah,
he talks about his aunt with cancer, about how they had a rat in her house, and it was a big one. They had to get an exterminator to come in, and they eventually caught it and killed it. But even after it was dead, she still believed that the rat was there. She could hear it in the walls and in the house. And actually what it was cancer had spread to her brain. So it affected her, just her being, just her thought process, her brain makeup. Mm-hmm. And Jesse's kind of pointing to, Mr. White, without saying it, you're so fixated on this fly. Maybe the same thing is happening to you in this instance.
Yeah. And, Walter's pretty quick to shut this down, basically saying, I saw my doctor last week, Jesse. I'm still in remission and I'm fine. But, obviously, even without having cancer in your brain, you're clearly having a mental breakdown if you're this fixated on one thing that, doesn't, shouldn't ruin your whole couple days now that he's been up. So he's like, whatever, I'm going to ignore you, and it doesn't really matter. But, Walter starts to feel the sleeping pills a little bit. He's getting a little wheezy, and, you could almost say he's getting a little emotional. And we go back to what we talked about in the perfect moment. Mm-hmm. Shortly, he kind of goes into his speech about the perfect moment, about how, he tried to find it. When was the best time for him to basically, leave Earth and, pass on.
Yeah. And that's kind of a tough conversation, but then he pivots to, what was so weird, Jesse, in life is that you remember the night I brought you your money back, you and Jane? He goes, yeah. Well, that night I went to a bar, which I never do, but I had a drink with Jane's father. What are the odds that I would do that? And Jesse's going, what? You never told me this. And he says, what did you guys talk about? And he says, family.
Yeah. It kind of hits pretty hard. And when I'm watching this, I'm thinking, okay, Walter, he's drugged. He's going to slip up and he's going to say something he's not supposed to, like, I returned that night, or, I went back. Yeah. In a way, kind of even hinting at it kind of would speculate that he did something wrong. And, he doesn't mention that, he's ever talking about Jesse, because that's who he really was talking about. If you can remember back to that episode, he was kind of just saying that they were talking about their daughters. They both share, what would you do for them? Never give up on them. And, Jesse's kind of taking it all in, probably realizes that maybe he did in conversation probably talk about him, because at that time, Walter was pretty worried about him.
Right. Yeah. He looked at him as a son, and he said, this woman is going to kill you, and she's going to kill herself and kill you in the process.
Yeah.
And so at this point, the fly starts to buzz around near the ceiling. So Jesse grabs a ladder, grabs these two, like these kind of carts with wheels on them that you can think of. And he puts a leg on each, completely unsafe, but he does it anyway. And he grabs the makeshift fly swatter and goes up and tries to kill the fly. And as he's at the top, starting to whack at it, Walt says, it's kind of out of the blue, I'm sorry about Jane. And he kind of repeats, I'm very sorry.
Yeah, it's almost like it's almost like he thought Jesse didn't hear him the first time, and he kind of said it again. But obviously, this is, like I said before, Walter getting it off his chest, because clearly the guilt, he feels from letting Jane die that night, it's kind of getting to him. And, he's not trying to tell Jesse what really happened, but at the same time, he's trying to apologize for it.
Right.
Which is tough, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Admit that and just to do it. But Jesse kind of says, it's not your fault. It's not mine either. It's not even hers. Like you said, two junkies with money. This was bound to happen eventually. And it does show growth from Jesse from rehab, because he blamed himself for the longest time. But I think it's also tough because Walter's face in this moment, even though he's falling asleep, is very like, I could have did something about this and I didn't do it, but he's not so out of it yet to admit, like, okay, like he told Skylar, I have a second cell phone. He's still holding back the key piece of information that would completely destroy the relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's, and watching this so much, I thought like he's going to slip up. He's going to say something, he gets further and further into his paranoia state and his, drug state. He's going to slip up, but he doesn't. And, Jesse kind of gets down off this contraption that he's built. And as soon as he gets on the ground, what's laying in front of him, Juggy?
The fly lands on, the ladder where you put your feet, the very top of the ladder, the platform, and he sees it, grabs the swatter, hammers it, and it's a great camera angle in the way they did it, because it's a slow-mo and you actually see the fly fall to the ground, and Jesse goes just like, yeah, bitch, I got you, fly, basically. And he goes, Mr. White, look at this. And Walter is passed out in the wheelie chair.
Yeah, he never gets to see the satisfaction of finally getting the fly, which, it's funny, obviously, because, it's almost ironic by the time he's out cold. Well, now they finally get it. And yeah, you're right. Who would have thought making a fly die would have been that dramatic? But it is, because of the war they went to get this fly out. And Jesse kind of just, brings Walter to another room, basically puts him to bed, takes his shoes off, even like a good friend would, and proceeds to cook, because, obviously work's not going to get done on its own, and does basically everything by himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought this was really a cool moment from him, because he put, like you said, put Walter to bed like a friend would, a drunk friend for coming home from the bar, making sure he's okay. And he cooks by himself. He packages it all. He weighs it. He did the entire work of two people by himself in this instance. And it kind of pivots to them leaving. And Walt's like, did you count? Yeah, everything's good. We're set. And he gets in the car and Jesse's having a cigarette. And this kind of brings us back to the end of episode 9, where he says, Jesse, come here. He goes, I don't know if you're taking extra half pound of meth from our cook. And I don't know, I couldn't say it in there because I don't know if it's bugged. But if you are, I won't be able to protect you. Yeah,
just really goes to show how smart Walter is. Basically caught on that he was taking from him. And, because he's a good friend, doesn't basically admit it to Gus, because as of right now, there's no camera in there, but it could easily just be bugged under a table or something, or in one of the canisters.
Right.
But, Jesse right away, obviously, no, I'm not stealing. But does it in a way that basically fesses up that he is.
Yeah, and I think this is growth from Walter in a sense, because he's not angry. He knows very well that Jesse's doing this. Like, it's very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Yet from the beginning until now, when he's asking about the numbers, kind of interrogating him, he's saying, I'm not accusing you, even though I know, it's like saying, are you an addict to somebody that is? And they, you know the answer before you ask the question. But it's like, I'm not mad at you, but I'm advising you that you stop doing this because it could potentially be a problem down the line that I can help you fix.
Yeah. Gives him kind of the warning shot that he maybe needs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like we said, we'll get into that more in the next couple episodes.
Yeah. And it's a great end to this episode. Walt's at home sleeping, middle of the night, and he hears a fly buzzing around his room. And the episode ends with him looking up at his fire alarm, whatever you want to call those little things that I remember we had it in our apartment. I unscrewed that pretty quick because of Dawson's cooking. But it's on the red light, like flashing down on him. He just sees the fly as the camera goes to black. I thought it was a really clever way to end the episode.
Oh, I think it's a great way to wrap up a really good episode. Like we said, only the two only characters who really get dialogue, and we see in this one are Jesse and Walter, kind of like the episode when they cook together on the vacation. You get to see, these don't come often, but when they do, they're good episodes. They're good character building between the two of them, obviously, especially this one where they seem to bond, even closer than they have in the past. But yeah, no, great way to end the episode. Kind of giving me a little like, does he really have cancer of the brain? Because,
right.
He does still hear the fly after, of course, it's been dead, kind of like Jesse's aunt's story as well.
Yeah, and Vince Gilligan's the director, executive producer of the show, and he's so brilliant. And they actually took this to Better Call Saul as well, because there's an episode where Saul and Mike are in the desert. And it's kind of like you said with Walt and Jesse in these episodes. I think it's cool that you do it with two really compelling characters. Obviously, if it was Skylar and Marie, I don't think it would be as effective. Right. But with your two main guys and two characters that people either love or hate, it's going to create drama. It's going to lead to some interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah. So these weren't the exciting episodes we talked about last week, but obviously still great episodes nonetheless. And we're kind of leading towards the end of the season. What are your thoughts? Do you have any kind of predictions? I know what's going to happen, but as of right now, where do you stand with everything going
on? Yeah, I like that. I like the angle to show that he's taking the meth, the extra, and that he's kind of mad that he's not the head honcho, because that's a different kind of avenue from Jesse, and it's kind of showing he's sick of being low man on the totem pole. So that's interesting. And looking ahead, I'm looking forward to, if I didn't watch the show, I would want to know more about Gus. And I know we're obviously watching it a few times. I know we're going to. And there's an intro that's really great coming up. That might be might be end of the season, beginning of season 4, which is one of the best of the show. But I like that you're stealing from this guy that we really don't know that much about yet. We know he's killed the cartel boss, but we don't know what he's capable of himself, in person. And I find that really compelling, that we're probably on the precipice of that happening sometime soon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we get to learn more about him, because even though he's been in the show for practically a whole season, we really don't know much about him. Whether, we don't know much about his personal life. All he knows is he's clearly got ties to the drug cartel. He's a drug dealer himself, and he makes chicken, and that's about it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. What's his backstory? How did he get into this? That's really interesting stuff for me. So that wraps up our episodes today. Only Tuesday, but Shay, I know you're a busy guy. So what, any initial weekend plans on the horizon for you?
Yeah, good. Looking forward to the rest of the week. Obviously, it's I think weather-wise we're going to have a decent one. But no, one of our good friends who you previously mentioned, Dawson, it's his birthday coming up. So by the time we speak again, it will be off. everyone listening, be sure to go wish that hooligan a good birthday, a good 25th. But no, other than that, hopefully get a couple drinks in with him and, celebrate another round around the sun, as they say.
Yeah. He's 25, getting old. That guy, we can never catch him. That's one thing that we can say, that he'll always be older than us. So when we are old, we can tell him, like, you're older than us.
Exactly. What about you? Any plans around the horizon moving forward?
If it's nice, maybe boating, potentially. I don't want to do too much. Maybe some preseason football. Yeah, I mentioned before the show, I watched like at least 5 complete games last week, which I'm proud and not so proud of. But yeah, football is on the horizon, man. And I'm watching a lot of CFL, some tennis right now. Baseball it's interesting, but again, like it comes and goes for me, the interest in baseball. Like Yankees, Red Sox play this week. That's a big series when it comes to the wild cards. I find the wild card race is really compelling. So that's what gets me glued to baseball this time of year.
Yeah, no, same. I threw on, and it's tough. Like, for people who don't know, I'm sure you've already said it. I'm a Dodgers fan. I threw on the Dodgers and Mets this week, because I haven't seen Scherzer pitch yet for them. And it was just basically liking. And as much as I love to watch the Dodgers play, you want a story at least a little bit and something to hold on to. If I know they're 6 up before the third, well, I'm more likely not going to shut that off. So I think as we move around and we tighten up on these wild cards, like you said, I think baseball is going to get more interesting moving into September. And of course, when playoffs start, highly looking forward to that, because I think it's going to be a great year for playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, as much as the Dodgers are the favorites, it really is wide open, because you got some teams that just believe that they can win. So it should be a ton of fun down the stretch here. But great episodes today. Have fun this weekend, Shay. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, thank you, friends, and you as well.
Everybody, thank you for tuning in. Catch me and Casey Ward Thursday live on Facebook at 4:30, where we will break down the Metropolitan Division in the NHL. So join us for that. Should be a fun conversation as we talk about hockey in August, because why not? Enjoy the week, everybody. We'll be back. I'll be back on here soon to talk to all of you. Until then, take care, and we'll talk soon.